This past weekend, we had a hackathon, and the hackathon was to build on top of the ERC20 platform, which is the platform for creating tokens on Ethereum, which is what a lot of companies are using in order to do these token distributions. And there's been companies that have been raising vast sums of money. I think it's a £1 billion market cap on ICOs or token distribution. So the challenge this weekend was to create a token on top of the ICOs. And this team, we worked together over the weekend. They did most of the work, to be honest. I helped with the concept a bit. But I also want to thank, where is the team from Andhra Pradesh, who were a sponsor? Are you guys around? Arun and Richa? Okay, but they were sponsors. FinTech Valley Vizag, which is the FinTech region in India, were one of the sponsors. But I'll get into it real quick. So it started off with this concept. Let me see if I can do this while still holding the mic. So it started off, we were thinking about IoT and hardware. So I have this little modular unit where you could, this is recognizable, I'm sure. So you have these little units about this size that are IoT modules that fit into your unit that you can pop in. And they normally don't fall out. But that led us to thinking more about IoT and the way that data is collected and how it's used. And currently, the economic value of IoT data, or even data collection, is over, I think, 11 trillion worth of economic value if you account for all the data. And most of this data is B2B. There are about somewhere between 13 and 16 billion connected devices. So how many of you here have a device that collects data, whether it's an accelerometer, Fitbit? All the phones do it now, so it should be a lot of hands. But how many of you are getting paid for that data? Let's see. Nope, none. That's what we thought. So what's happening now is that what we thought of doing was creating tokenizing the data. So imagine that you take the data, pass it on to a central hub on a distributed ledger, and then that data that you contribute is worth a token or percentage of a token that you get back. So this concept we call Xenxus can be applied to homes, cars, vehicles, health, and we're creating a marketplace for IoT data. So you give the data, the more you give, the better quality of the data, and then insurers on the other end, or other people interested in the data, provide bits of token. So we're trying to tokenize IoT data across the world, and most people like Google, Amazon, a lot of them are validating that this is a thing to do, but it's not being tokenized. And the guys over the weekend worked really hard and actually created a demo that pulled an API of data. I think it was of bicycles in this case, because we didn't, we needed to use real data. It runs, the data is then stored, a smart contract is pinged, and then you receive a token or percentage of token for the data that you contribute. So what we're looking to do is actually create a a marketplace for B2B IoT data. And while it's in the early stages, the fact that crypto financing is in an early stage, with some of the guys' support, we're going to be sharing this wherever we can. So what we're looking for is anybody that wants to sort of get involved on the journey, because it's a big idea and not likely to happen with 3 people. It requires a lot of, a marketplace for IoT is pretty lofty. But I will probably leave it there. But if you have any questions for me or the guys on the concept called Xenxus, which is an IoT or data marketplace through tokenization on the Ethereum network. If you have a question, please give us a shout. Any questions?
Just on the pricing of these tokens, would it be just more offer and demand, or?
So with these tokens, it depends on the data and the data quality. So for car insurance, the data quality might be the accuracy of the data plus the how good the driver is. So if you'd be rating the data at different points. So the bidder on one end is actually bidding for a specific kind of data. If you're a bad driver, you might get 2 pence worth of the token. If you're a really good driver, somebody might pay the 50p equivalent for that token. So the marketplace is based on the data that's created and the people wanting it. And obviously, by sector it would vary, so that you'd end up, you're basically mining The data that you provide is mining, and the quality of the data and the volume of the data needs to have a value to somebody else. So you're essentially mining and then receiving data. So there's a great variety of possibilities there, but we want to test it on something to see if we can get traction. Cool. Yep.
Is it somewhat like, are you becoming, is it like a middle market for companies? So, thank you. Thank you. Is it effective for middle market? For instance, if I'm having data, I haven't found a way to sell that data, are you becoming kind of the middle, use the phrase, middleman between me and the end user versus me selling it directly?
Well, right now, there's no real way to sell it. It's a big B2B marketplace of data, and most of it isn't used. But right now, consumers don't have a way to sell it. You're actually paying, £200 for Apple to help collect the data, and you're paying, with your time and resource. So there's nobody making money off of their own data right now. So what we're trying to do is to change that and actually have a resource. And if the tokens are worth even, 1/1000th of a cent, obviously data, it's always going to keep coming, so you can accumulate it after a while, and it's about getting a marketplace actually moving, because there isn't one at the moment that you can easily tap into. Did you want to add?
Yes, I would like to add that with the efficiencies of the new technologies like blockchain and IPFS, all the cost of storing the data and distributing it and making the transactions, it's being reduced immensely. So this marketplace will be definitely much more efficient than traditional way of selling this data.
So I understand you're saying it's still new technology, of course. So with looking at this, how is it when you say percentage, so will there be something like I would pay to the service and then I get a percentage back? Can you explain a little bit more how the profit exchange works?
Yeah, well, we were thinking on the profits as a percentage of the transactions, and this will definitely be much better than, definitely nowadays that your data, you are not profiting anything from it. So it's mostly based on a percentage of the transactions. And every deal is different because companies bid for the data, and the providers of the data, every consumer accepts accepts the bid and then sells their data directly to the best bidder, right? So it's like a traditional marketplace.
Thank you.
We did some testing at the weekend, and we were getting, I think, about like 1,000 transactions every second just with one API. API is a way to access data in a third party. So you're talking about billions of transactions. So there is an open problem there about how to solve that with big data. But it is a very significant opportunity. You're looking at a market that, if you compare to SAP, which is supply chain management as a parallel market, they've got revenues of over 2 billion a year. So it's a very significant opportunity. Yeah.
I mean, and it depends. So it has to be, as a concept, it's really broad. So if we just take, I don't know, health data, for example, if your Fitbit data goes to a central place where you can turn that into tokens, people who do a lot of active running can contribute a lot of data, and then what happens is people who are interested in health data, like Nike or the NHS or the government of XYZ, can bid for the health data, so you can get these pools of health data of running. So all of a sudden you have an instant research report on factual data, and then you can do other things with it, or even marketing and that sort of thing. So the data is there, it's being collected, it's just not going centralized. And if your IoT data, if you're only sharing it with Nike, you can't get money off on Reebok or Adidas. So the point is, if it goes centrally, then it's your data and you decide who to sell to if somebody has a better offer. But the secondary market for the tokens could be interesting as well. So this is a broad sort of, we couldn't possibly deliver this over the weekend, but it's an aim to sort of take the concept on and add tokens to data so that we can give people value without any friction. I think, yep. Well, I mean, the data is hashed, so you don't, like with blockchain, you don't know who, well, technically you don't know who the person is on the other end, so it's hashed so that the data is protected. You only get the physical data that you need.
Although you might opt to not be anonymous, and definitely that will be more expensive than anonymous data, right?
But I think that's all the time we have. But for those of you that are interested in, oh, sorry.
Yeah, just have one more question. So the database is not distributed; it's just the blockchain itself being distributed.
So
Can you explain that?
again, that's something that we need to explore further. The database ideally would be distributed, but I think in an ideal world there would be a central third party sort of governing it and governing the difficulty and the different rates and what's valid. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen. So we don't have all the answers at the moment. But I think that's all the time we have. Thank you.